Hello and welcome to Brain Power. I'm your host Thomas Trombley, and we'll be discussing topics ranging from current news, world events, and religion, basically whatever bit of news that catches my eye. If you have a story you'd like covered here, or a question you'd like answered, send me a message on Twitter at BrainPowerUp. Use the hashtag BrainPowerUp, like the group at facebook.com/BrainPowerOnline, or visit the website at brainpoweronline.webs.com. Today's Sunday, July 19th, and, for those who've been paying attention in the last couple days, we sent a satellite to Pluto. We sent it a few years ago, but it just recently got there, and it's kind of cool to be able to be alive right now to bear witness to this. Anyway, that being said, I've actually got a couple stories, on that tack. Starting out here, the New Horizons spacecraft began revealing its treats today, providing scientists with the first close-ups of Pluto and its largest moon, Charon. The dwarf planet has a mountain range about 11,000 feet high, roughly the size of the Rockies. Scientists were surprised to see no impact craters, suggesting the surface is quite young, no more than 100 million years old. As for Charon, it has visible trenches and canyons, along with a dark patch on its north pole nicknamed Mordor. The Times notes it will take more than a year for scientists to retrieve all the data from the New Horizons spacecraft. So, that's kind of cool, though, that it's, we finally made it. We're there. It's going to take a while for the information to actually be useful. But, that's okay. That's time that I'm willing to wait for. Anyway, it's kind of interesting, though, because I'm also looking forward to this part. Once again, a little bit in the future here. The New Horizons spacecraft has wowed us back on Earth with its 3 billion-mile Pluto mission, but it's still got a lot of traveling to do. In fact, scientists expect it to keep making headlines for another 2 decades or so. After Pluto, the spacecraft is off to explore the Kuiper Belt, which USA Today describes as a region of the solar system beyond the known planets. In about a month, mission leaders will pick an object in the belt and chart a course for it. A trip that will take about 2 years. Smithsonian explains the significance. These objects are some of the oldest, most pristine nubbins of ice and rock in the solar system, leftovers from the process that formed our cosmic neighborhood some 4.6 billion years ago. After that, the spacecraft will escape the sun's influence and never again return to our solar system. In the words of Business Insider, at some point in the mid-2030s, it won't have enough power to communicate with Earth anymore, but scientists are eager to glean what they can between now and then. We have a chance to go further and explore the deep reaches of the heliosphere, like Voyager did, and to do that with much more modern instruments, and hopefully return data that will really add to the storehouse of what we know about our environment in the solar system. Once again, these are great times that we live in right now for space exploration. We're just, granted, back in the 70s, there were the Voyager 1 and 2 probes. They were really our first major steps outside the neighborhood, so to speak. But now, as a civilization, we're growing up a little bit more. Technologically speaking, we're a lot further ahead than we were back in the 70s. This is, like I said, truly exciting times. Anyway, while we're on the topic of space, let's actually bring things back a little bit closer to Earth here. Using a new model to forecast the sun's activity, scientists predict solar activity will fall by 60% in the 2030s to conditions not seen since a mini ice age in 1645. For almost 2 centuries, scientists have known that the sun's activity changes on a 10 to 12 year cycle. Each cycle is slightly different, and predicting the sun's activity has proven difficult thanks to a dynamo caused by fluid deep within the sun. However, after reviewing magnetic field activity over 3 solar cycles, researchers say they found a second dynamo close to the sun's surface. They both have a frequency of approximately 11 years, although this frequency is slightly different. Researcher Valentina Zharkova explains, the new model based on the pair has allowed for unprecedentedly accurate predictions. As if to crush all hope of warmth, Zharkova notes they're 97% accurate. That doesn't mean we're all going to freeze solid. Zharkova explains that, according to the double dynamo theory, 2 sets of magnetic waves, originating in 2 different layers in the sun's interior, sway between the sun's northern and southern hemispheres. When they are in phase, we have strong solar activity. But when the 2 waves exactly mirror each other, peaking at the same time but in opposite hemispheres of the sun, as is predicted for 2030 to 2040, their interaction will be disruptive, or they will nearly cancel out each other. We predict that this will lead to the properties of a Maunder minimum. The Maunder minimum, also known as the Little Ice Age, brought significant temperature drops to the northern hemisphere from 1645 to 1715, causing England's River Thames to freeze during the winter of 1683 to 1684. Haaretz.com puts the dates at 1300 to 1870. Reports some countries suffered crop failure and famine. So it's kind of a thing to keep an eye out for. If this is accurate, people living in the north, like myself, I live in Minnesota, which is it gets pretty cold in winter here. Yeah, there will be people moving south. The way they describe it, it's going to be cold, but not like day after tomorrow cold. Anyway, moving on. Speaking, while we're on the topic of nature, anybody who's the rugged outdoorsy type who decided to try mountain climbing, things will be a little bit different for you if you've climbed Yosemite, Half Dome, for example. What's the word I'm looking? Anyway, let me just read the story. A massive sheet of rock has fallen from the vertical face of Half Dome in Yosemite National Park, making one of the most popular routes attempted by climbers in North America even more challenging. The granite sheet that peeled off measured roughly 100 by 200 feet. It was discovered by climbers who were attempting the route and had to turn back. What used to be relatively easy climbing has gotten much more difficult, says park geologist and climber Greg Stock. Half Dome, an icon of the park that is visible throughout Yosemite Valley, is scaled by hundreds of experienced climbers each year. The rock fell from halfway up the sheer face of Half Dome, which rises more than 1,000 feet. A path for hikers using cable handrails was not changed. There are several routes for climbers to scale Half Dome, but the one impacted when the rock fell ranks as one of the top 50 climbing destinations in North America. See, I mean, that really doesn't affect me much, because, I don't climb. But, still, it's kind of interesting. I think it's kind of cool to get that information out there. Anyway, that's actually part of a whole tag. We'll read that story later here. Here we go. Here's an interesting one. When April Lee Yates ate dinner at Bennett's Calabash Seafood Restaurant in Myrtle Beach on Sunday night, she had no money and no intention of paying. It certainly didn't help when she started to cause a disturbance with other customers after several hours there. But don't worry, she had a plan. Management asked Yates to pay her dinner tab and leave, but she refused to pay the $26 bill. Uh, Police officers then asked Yates what she planned to do when the bill came, and Yates explained that Jesus was going to pay her tab. She was taken to jail after that. No word yet on whether Jesus is supposed to pay her bail, too. I don't know, I got a little chuckle out of that. That was interesting. Uh, what do we read now? Here we go. School field trips regularly roll through Auschwitz, but 2 high school students visiting the site yesterday learned their lesson about honoring the victims in a much different way. Police in Poland say the 17-year-old British students were caught trying to steal prisoner artifacts, including a comb, buttons, pieces of glass, and spoons. Museum security saw the teens pick up the items from the ground near a building where Nazi guards stored the confiscated belongings of victims. The teens were searched and admitted to trying to steal the items. We understand they've explained that they've picked up the items without thinking, and they apologized unreservedly for the offense they have given, and expressed real remorse for their action, says a spokesperson for the Perse School in the UK. Though they spent the night in jail, a Polish court gave the boys a suspended sentence on the theft charges, and they'll avoid more time behind bars by regularly reporting in to police back home. You know, that one's kind of a weird one, because I mean, it's a very important historical site, and you know, I understand where the boys were coming from. You know, that they say that they picked the items up without thinking. Right? No, they were thinking, kind of. They were probably just thinking, hey, you know what? I want a memento of the occasion. You know, and I can't blame them for that, but you know, it's still. It's an active museum, and you know that's not how you honor the past. Just my opinion, I guess. But anyway, here we go. A Texas veterinarian may have angered a lot of people, but she won't be charged for allegedly killing a cat with an arrow through the head back in April. The investigation into Dr. Kristen Lindsay could find no substantial evidence that Lindsay committed a crime. Though she posted a photo of herself with the dead cat on Facebook, which she later deleted, the sheriff's office couldn't verify the photo, and an Austin County grand jury today no-billed her. The county district attorney's office says, according to the Houston Chronicle, a no-bill finding means there's not enough proof to file charges. A crowd gathered outside the courthouse to protest the finding. Without more information, the state lacks proof that this incident even occurred in the state of Texas. The DA says in a press release, adding that investigators also couldn't prove the cat's manner of death was cruel. The American Veterinary Medical Association itself says a bolt to the head, performed correctly, is a humane way to euthanize, and, as KBTX notes, the press release also points out that in some parts of the U.S., hunting stray cats is perfectly legal. The sheriff's office says it was told that Lindsay was trying to protect her own pets from a potentially rabid stray cat. But the cat she's accused of killing was reportedly a house pet named Tiger who went missing. Lindsay was fired from her job at an animal clinic after the photo went viral. As for her veterinary license, the DA notes it is not involved in the Texas Board of Veterinary Medical Examiners' decision on that. You know, I'm sorry, but that's just not right. You know, if it was a stray cat, you know, potentially rabid, whatever, and this woman actually killed the cat, okay, that's fine, I guess. But if they're right and that's actually somebody's pet, I'm sorry, but no, that's just not right at all. Yeah. So, anyway, on a completely different note, because it's a different note that I need here, we've got this week's Asshole of the Week. Alrighty, yes, this guy is definitely Asshole of the Week. And once again, this one is a nominee for Asshole of the Year. The Daily Beast has christened Ohio's Paul Pelton America's Worst Samaritan, a distinction the 41-year-old earned thanks to his behavior at a deadly car crash. He filmed the two teenage victims instead of trying to help them, and then tried to sell the footage to local media. At one point, Pelton opened the back door of the vehicle and filmed the interior as 17-year-old Cameron Friend lay dying, and driver Zachary Gooden, also 17, lay critically injured. Pelton muttered, "Idiots," through his video, which he ended up posting on Facebook after getting no takers from TV stations. By opening the car door, Pelton got himself into a legal, not ethical, trouble. Police have charged him with vehicle trespass. Persons are not allowed to trespass into a person's vehicle criminally and without permission for the seemingly singular cause of filming a young man's dying moments for profit, wrote Captain Roger Watkins of the Lorain Police Department on Facebook. Other bystanders were at the scene with Pelton, but they were trying to help the teens. Pelton has since apologized publicly. "I just wanted to educate people to slow down," he tells the Cleveland TV station. "I didn't do that to have some type of gore video." Friend died from his injuries, and Gooden remains in critical condition, reports 19 Action News. "To take that video and put it on Facebook, it just shows you have no principles," says one of the bystanders who tried to help at the scene. That guy's mom probably had to see that. And I agree completely with the last statement of this article here. The person who died and the driver who is still listed in critical condition. It's actually, this story was July 16th. So I'm sorry, but it's bad enough to know that a friend, family member, or even child was in either a fatal or at least life-threatening car crash. It's another thing entirely to stumble across a video on social media. A video no less shot by somebody who was there at the scene and chose not to help. It's... Like I said, this guy is definitely Asshole of the Week, and he is a nominee for Asshole of the Year. Just my thoughts. Moving on. God, which story do I want to read first? Let's go with this one. An officer who pushed for female integration into the Marine Corps is crying foul after being fired last month. Former Lieutenant Colonel Kate Germano admits to being a tough commander at the all-female boot camp on Parris Island, South Carolina, but says she was no more demanding than her male counterparts. She did, however, hold her recruits to a high standard during her 12 months on the job and gained enemies along the way. This whole thing started when her female Marines, were telling us they were being mistreated, Parris Island Chief of Staff Colonel Jeffrey Foltz says. She was telling them their male counterparts will never respect them if they don't get good physical scores. You just don't do that. Under Germano's leadership, female physical training became more demanding, and many more women excelled at the rifle range. They knew they were as good as every other recruit, and my hope was the Marines saw it too, says Germano. But she also bumped heads with her superior, Colonel Daniel Haas, in what the Times has called the most male-dominated U.S. military service. In a probe leading to Germano's dismissal, Haas said that making an argument is okay and encouraged. Being argumentative is not. Despite departing from the Marine Corps under less than ideal conditions, the now retired Germano left a legacy that some call positive. She made a fundamental impact on the mindset of Marines and the leadership, a female officer says. That's the most important change we can have. And my personal take on this is, I do agree with, what was it, the Parris Island Chief of Staff, Jeffrey Foltz. You really can't say, hey, you know what, the men will never respect you if you don't push yourself harder and harder. That's just wrong. I'm sorry, that's a terrible way to look at things. But at the same time, I also agree with Germano that if you want something and everybody tells you you can't have it, you should be pushing yourself harder and harder to get it. It's just my personal opinion, but I'm happy that women are in the Marine Corps, and I hope that continues. I hope that this hasn't set a precedent to kick women out of the Marine Corps. Like I said, I hope it stays. I hope there will be many more female Marines. On kind of a similar note, well, because it involves, the military and who can serve, who can't, whatnot. The Pentagon's current regulations banning transgender individuals from serving the military are outdated, Defense Secretary Ash Carter said today, ordering a 6-month study aimed at formally ending one of the last gender or sexuality-based barriers to military service. Carter says he's creating a working group that will review the policies and determine if lifting the ban would have any impact on the military's ability to be ready for battle. But he says the group will begin with the presumption that transgender people should be able to serve openly, without adverse impact on military effectiveness and readiness, unless and except where objective practical impediments are identified. The plan, first reported by the AP, gives the services time to methodically work through the legal, medical, and administrative issues and develop training to ease any transition, and senior leaders believed 6 months would be sufficient. Carter asked his personal undersecretary, Brad Carson, to lead the working group of senior military and civilian leaders to take an objective look at the issue, including the costs, and determine whether it would create any insurmountable problems that could derail the plan. The group would also develop uniform guidelines. The Defense Department's current regulations regarding transgender service members are outdated and causing uncertainty that distracts commanders from our core missions, Carter says in a statement. So, I mean, that's kind of cool. It's a good thing to have, I guess. Really, it's... Personally, I push for equality everywhere. As granted, this really shows my geeky nerd side, but there's a belief in the Vulcan race on Star Trek called IDIC, Infinite Diversity in Infinite Combinations, and that personally is my belief as well. I believe in that. I just feel that is the correct way. There's too much diversity on this planet, be it natural or man-made diversity. You can't waste your time hating one group or another or excluding one group or another. It's just not right. Anyway, continuing on the military bit here, a teenage girl in New Jersey is suing the federal government for the right to be drafted, or at least the right to register for the draft. And the draft hasn't been used in decades. Though identified only as EKL in the federal class action suit, the Star-Ledger identifies the teen as recent high school graduate Elizabeth Kyle, and her complaint is fairly straightforward. Now that the military is opening up even combat roles to women, it makes no sense to require males to register for the draft at age 18, but not females. In fact, it's unconstitutional, she argues. Kyle filed the complaint via her mother, asserting that the Selective Service violates the civil rights of females by excluding them. If the two sexes can fight and die together, they can register together. If not, then no one should have to register. The complaint states, as quoted by the Courthouse News Service. Kyle says she tried to register online but got shut down as soon as she checked the box for female. She hopes to represent a group of women ages 18 to 25 in the suit. Any such change would require Congress to tweak the wording of the law, says a Selective Service spokesman. Legislation introduced by Representative Charles Rangel earlier this year would do that, along with reinstating the draft itself. Yeah, now, as a former military man myself, looking at it, I don't think, I can't see a situation where we would need the draft again. If World War III breaks out, yeah, we would probably need the draft. But realistically, I think our military numbers are high enough to where we can handle pretty much anything that comes our way. It's just my opinion. But anyway, speaking of war and wars that we've fought, I've got to say, I was really, really hoping that I wouldn't have any cause to mention Trump again. But no, here he is for the fourth week in a row, and I get the distinct feeling I'll be mentioning him next week. He might even be asshole of the week again next week. Who knows what new things he'll do next week. Anyway, now, personally, I didn't care much for John McCain myself. I didn't vote for the guy. I wasn't planning on it. But my goodness, still, Trump is a prick. I'm sorry. John McCain and Donald Trump have been sparring the last few days, with McCain telling the New Yorker that Trump fired up the crazies with his immigration comments. Today, Trump shot back in what can only be described as Trump fashion, by attacking the former prisoner of war's military record, reports The Hill. He's a war hero because he got captured, said Trump during a Q&A at the Family Leadership Summit in Ames, Iowa. I like people who weren't captured. McCain, of course, spent about 6 years as a POW in Vietnam after his plane got shot down. Ben Jacobs of The Guardian tweets that Trump says he won't apologize, and Medialite can't resist noting that Trump got draft deferments. I'm sorry, but that's just... I think I can see the point that Trump was trying to make. And I know I'm kind of stepping into the devil's shoes here, but the idea of, I would prefer the soldier who was on the ground and, didn't get captured. Okay, but McCain wasn't part of the infantry walking around and all of a sudden, Japanese troops came up and captured him. No, his plane was shot down in enemy territory. There's no comparison there. He literally had nowhere to go, no safe place to go, no way to escape being captured. But on another attack here, a Donald Trump tweet featured soldiers in Nazi uniforms along with the White House, the U.S. flag, $100 bills, and Trump himself. But the campaign stresses that it was a mistake made by a young intern, and the Waffen SS logos are not part of Trump's vision for America. The image, which appears over the message, "We need real leadership, we need results, let's put the U.S. back into business," included a stock photo of what appears to be war reenactors, not actual Nazi troops, The Guardian reports. A young intern created and posted the image and did not see the very faded figures within the flag of the stock photo. A Trump spokesman tells CNN. The intern apologized and immediately deleted the tweet. It's not clear whether the intern had to hear Trump's catchphrase, "You're fired." Nazis or no Nazis, Trump is now the front-runner for the GOP nomination, according to the latest USA Today Suffolk University poll, which puts Trump at 17%, Jeb Bush at 14%, and 5 others in single digits. But he also came off worst of the 7 in hypothetical head-to-heads against Hillary Clinton, and Suffolk analysts suspect his campaign might fade like those of Herman Cain and Michelle Bachmann in 2012. One can only hope, right? Sad part is there is a sadistic side of me that actually kind of hopes that Trump does get the presidency, but he does something so heinous, so completely stupid, that he gets impeached within the first week or two. Just so that way the American people can look at him and say, Trump, you're fired. Once again, just my opinion. Really, that's the only reason why I would want Trump as president, just so, we can fire his ass. All right, final story about Trump this week, I swear. Mainly because it's the final one that I've collected on Trump. How rich is Donald Trump? His campaign says he's worth $10 billion, and that figure has been filed on disclosure forms with the Federal Election Commission, although his fortune was apparently more than the FEC's forms could handle. This report was not designed for a man of Mr. Trump's massive wealth, the campaign said in a press release. For instance, they have boxes once a certain number is reached that simply state 50 million or more. Many of these boxes have been checked. As an example, if a building owned by Mr. Trump is worth $1.5 billion, the box checked is 50 million or more. A $10 billion fortune would make Trump the richest person ever to run for president, the AP reports. Forbes, however, estimates Trump's fortune at $4.1 billion, and the Trump campaign's press release only had details of around 50 million in assets. Much of the discrepancy appears to lie in the candidate's $3.3 billion valuation of the Trump brand and marketing deals, according to the AP. Forbes calculated that the Trump brand is worth $125 million, and that the estimate was made before companies like Univision and Macy's started cutting their ties with Trump. So that is kind of a good question. It's, how much does the guy really have? Personally, I don't care, and I don't really think how rich he is will affect anything involving his presidency. But the way I see it is, he's one of them sums of bitches who was claiming, oh, Obama was born in Kenya. Show me the proof. Show me the birth certificate. I want to see the long form. I want to see every last itty-bitty tiny detail of where Obama was born. Okay, fine, buddy. I want to see every last itty-bitty detail. I want to see the long form of exactly how much money you got. I want to know how much money you have down to the cent. It's I don't care how much it costs your accountants to figure it out. I want to know. Just because you wanted to know. Anyway, wow, I'm looking at about 10 minutes left here. Alright, I didn't think I would go through stories that quickly. Let's try and go with a longer story. Because I've actually got a few long stories that I've set aside just for moments like this. Here's one. What does Jesus say about ISIS? While many Christians are crying out in response to ISIS, bomb them, kill them, and make them suffer, what is Jesus crying out? What does Jesus have to say about ISIS? Pardon. No, first I want to point out that this is actually from a Christian website, loverevealed.net. So that'll help some of this. In order to call ourselves Christians, we must follow the teachings and ethics of our King, Jesus. As we hear many Christians crying out for bloodshed, pain, and retribution towards ISIS, I can hear Jesus crying out, "Love your enemies, do good to them, and you will be children of the Most High. For he is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. Be compassionate just as your Father is compassionate." See Luke chapter 6, verses 35 and 36. Peter certainly struggled with this understanding of peace, restoration, and mercy being true justice rather than violence and retribution like many of us do today. Do you remember when the soldiers were coming to take Jesus away and Peter cut the high priest's ear off to protect him? Well, many of us would celebrate Peter for cutting his ear off while trying to protect Jesus. It doesn't get much more heroic than protecting Jesus, right? Jesus rebuked Peter and then healed the one coming to take him away to be killed. The same way Jesus told Peter to put your sword away when he cut the ear off the one who was taking him to be killed, I believe he is telling us the same today. As Jesus said, if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. One thing that is very clear is, Jesus rules his kingdom by laying his life down and identifying with the victim like Abel, not ruling with a sword and violence like Cain. Jesus reveals his strength in what many consider weakness. Jesus said, "I only did what I see my Father doing." See John 5:19. And over he revealed to us violence and retribution is not a part of the nature of his Abba. There is no greater revealing of this truth than the cross. We see Jesus hanging on the cross, looking at the very people crucifying him, making a mockery of him, and ultimately murdering him, and saying, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." In that moment, Jesus was not asking his Father to do something contrary to his nature. Rather, he was revealing the heart of his loving Father to us as he forgave us. I want us to take just a moment to consider this and do a practical application that could be revolutionary if we get this. Did you know that every time ISIS murders someone, they are murdering a person God created and ultimately murdering Jesus in them? Imagine in your mind for just a second with me, ISIS being the one who was murdering Jesus at the cross. Picture them torturing him, taunting him, and finding pleasure in it. As they are doing this, Jesus' family are witnessing this and bawling as they watch him be murdered. At this point, I believe we can all feel the pain as we look at Jesus suffering on the cross. Finally, we see Jesus open his mouth looking at the very people torturing him, haunting him and murdering him, and he says, "Father, forgive ISIS, for they know not what they do." While we are seeing ISIS act so evil, monstrous, and barbaric, and it certainly breaks our hearts, we must remember the cry of Jesus, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." I have shed many tears seeing what they have done to people, including a friend of mine whose family member was burned alive by them, and praying for comfort and peace for the families who have lost loved ones. I have also shed many tears feeling God's love for the members of ISIS and his desires for them to know how much he loves them. I pray in the coming days we would begin to realize that God is just as much in love with the victimizer as he is the victim. I have heard people say they will never change. May I remind you that Saul was the ISIS of the day to the first century church at one point. After killing many Christians, he encountered God on the road to Damascus, and his life was forever changed. From there, Paul went on to write 2/3 of the New Testament, and beautifully communicated the revelation of Christ and him crucified, grace and the love of God. While some of you may say, "Josh, you're a coward for believing such a thing," my response is, if taking the teachings and ethics of Jesus seriously and desiring to live like him makes me a coward, then I am proud to be one. Oh, wow, I actually went overtime now. Just noticed that. It's a good thing, because now the story is over with. We're just going to cut things here. My goodness, I'm at the 40-minute mark. This has been Brain Power. The next show will be Sunday, July 26th. And as usual, if you have a story you'd like covered here or a question you'd like answered, send me a message on Twitter at BrainPowerUp. Use the hashtag BrainPowerUp. Like the group at facebook.com/brainpoweronline or visit the website at brainpoweronline.webs.com.